you've ever heard someone describe themselves as a generator, a reflector, a projector, manifestor, a manifesting generator, what they were talking about is their energy type in human design. Human design, if you're not familiar with it, is a metaphysical system that's sort of similar to astrology in that it uses your birth date, time, and location, and gives you some information on how you can work with your energy, how you can make decisions, how you can move about in the world, and get to know and work on coming back to yourself and your center from the conditioning or influencing of the people around you and the environments that you're in. It's a really great system I've found for coming back to self-trust and for really understanding relationships between people in your life. And so in this video, I'm going to try to go as quick as I possibly can and give you a breakdown of the types, but specifically how these energy types actually work together. So you may have Googled for your type and learned a little bit about it before, but in this video, I want to encourage you to watch the whole thing and to think about how these types might interact and the kinds of people that you might be coming up against or working with in your life. If you're new here, hi, my name is Avery, and I help justice-aligned, neurodivergent, and nerdy humans to cultivate ease and self-trust for growing into our emerging future. I find that human design is a really good tool for this work because I think it really aligns with this philosophy of neuroemergence, of using our way we think and process information, our neurotype, as a lens through which we can kind of view change and how we grow and how we evolve and how we come into the world. It's a system that acknowledges that we all have like different ways of being energetically. It's also a system that really encourages people to experiment, to play with it, to try it out. So my approach to human design is very non-dogmatic. I'm going to give you some information and you can take it or leave it, play with it, see what resonates, what doesn't resonate. But I find that fundamentally, it aligns pretty well with this idea of neurodiversity and not even an idea, just a fact that we're all kind of different in the way that we work with our energy, the way we interact with each other, the way we communicate, process information and language. And so, one size fits all approach doesn't usually work that well to describe people. Like I said, it's not just about like understanding yourself, but I think this is a good system for understanding interactions and how people play off of each other. One difference with human design compared to astrology is that whereas for a lot of parts of your astrological chart, like say a sun sign, there's not going to be that big a difference in how many Leos there are, how many Aquariuses or Pisces there are in the world. For a lot of parts of your chart, it's pretty even. It's probably not exactly, but the number of people born on a particular birthday is going to have some variance, and some of it's cultural and some of it's weather and when people are procreating, but like really there's not that big a split. Human design is a little different. There are a lot of some types and very few of other types, and so if you're one of the types that's maybe less common, I think that can be affirming and useful to know. I think if you're one of the types that is more common, it's not necessarily that you're going to feel totally seen by everything out there about that type. I am one of those, and that is part of why I do this work, because I think sometimes it's not everybody is all that neurodivergent friendly, and so I wanted to offer that perspective to the field. But if you don't already know your energy type, I would encourage you to pause the video and just jump to Google and just Google like human design body graph. There's plenty of sites or human design chart. You can get a free one. You're going to need to know your birth date, your birth time and location. If you don't have an exact time, I have a newsletter link below where you can sign up to get access to me via email, and feel free to ask. I can help you try to see if it's possible to narrow down your type if you don't know your time. If you have an approximation, or even if you're really not sure, I can check that out for you. At least tell you which ones it could possibly be. But if you do have a birth time, date, and location, you should be able to get a free chart. And all you're going to be looking at for this video is just to see like what is your energy type. That's really what we're going to be talking about here. If you want to and you have consent of people in your family or partner or coworker or somebody that you'd like to think about the relationship with, you could also totally pull up and see what their energy type is. You might also be able to kind of have a little bit of a spidey sense for it based on these descriptions. So I'm going to just run down what each of these types are and give you a little bit of information about the kind of energetic aura, the way people's energy is going to be described in the human design system, and how that's going to impact the way that people relate to each other, kind of what their role is in the collective, meaning all of us, in the collective, in the whole, what that energy type's role is, and then also kind of how that informs their human design strategy, which is a way of using energy in the world, is the best way to explain it. I'll probably be doing a video soon talking about strategy and authority together, and I also do have a free resource that I will try to remember to leave a link to below, but leave me a comment if I forgot, because I'm ADHD and it happens, but I do have a resource specifically about your human design strategy and from a neurodivergent perspective, so you might want to check that out as well. So let's go ahead and jump into the different energy types. Like I said, I would recommend go ahead if you've got a moment and grab yourself a beverage and listen through all the types, even the ones that aren't your own, to kind of think about how these interrelate, because you're going to come across all of them out in the world. There's only 5 types. So we have, let's go ahead and just start from some of the more common ones. I hope you'll forgive me, y'all who are not, but that's what I am. So we're going to start with what I am, and that's a generator. So there's actually 2 different types, generators and manifesting generators, that together form about 70% of the population. So the vast majority of the people you meet, about 70%, are going to be either a generator or a manifesting generator. We're not going to talk too much in depth in this video. I might do some in the future, and you can always look it up, but or check out that free resource I have below. It has some more information about working with each energy type, things like sleep, things like various things in your life that might be specific to that type, what determines the type, etc. We're going to kind of skip a lot of that right now. And so I'm not going to talk too much about the difference between generators and manifesting generators, but both of these types, our energetic aura is described as open and enveloping. And so what that means is that naturally our energy is kind of pulling in opportunities, people, things to interact with, things to respond to, which is our strategies to respond. So if you're a generator or a manifesting generator, it's good to kind of get out in the world, whatever that means to you. For me, it often does not mean physically going out in the world. Sometimes it means getting on the internet, and that's okay too. But, having lots of different opportunities is great for various generator types, because we will just sort of naturally tend to pull things in towards us, little synchronicities, little things that we need to work with. And that's because the generator types are sort of these energetic powerhouses in the sense that we have more of a sustained access to the generative energy for creating things. That's not to say that other types don't create things, of course, but we have more of a sort of more consistent energy flow, where we have, again, consistent, reliable access to energy. Now, that doesn't mean that if you're burnt out, if you're exhausted, if you're chronically ill, if you have chronic fatigue, it doesn't mean that your type is wrong, right? This is something that a lot of people struggle with, and it's one thing that I really like working with generators, particularly folks who are autistic or ADHD like me or both, or have chronic fatigue or mental health stuff, is that a lot of times it's well, I'm not working hard all the time, so can I still be a generator? Yes, you can. So the reason there's so many of us, the reason that generators are such a big, type, is that we are kind of the ones that are described as doing the work in the world, and often we're the ones who take the ball and run with it. We might be the ones who carry out particular work or keep things moving. But each of us is designed to do the work that we love and that lights us up and that gives us a hell yes, that lights that fire in our belly and makes us say, yes, let's do it. And we don't live in a culture that really like encourages us to do that, right? We live in a culture with a lot of obligation, a lot of, oh, I should do this and I should do that. And so if you're a generator type and you're like, wow, I have no energy, often what that might indicate is that you're spending a fair amount of time or some amount of time, or you've been spending time for a long time on things that don't really feed you, that are kind of like slowly draining, that you're applying that energy because, yeah, you have consistent access to it, but you still want to apply it to the things that are meant for you. And so when a generator type, whether generator or manifesting generator, is really living into their design and experimenting with the system and trying things out, a lot of times what you'll find is that you go through a process of having to release some obligations, having to really like tune into, and sometimes this takes a while to really like tune into what's for you and what's right for you. It's okay if you don't feel that right away. But a lot of the process for generators is about learning like what's drawing you in. And ideally, if we're all doing this, it's like there's going to be stuff that's right for everybody, and the stuff that's right for nobody is right for nobody, and it can go away. So that's like kind of the philosophical idea. But we need a lot of generator types because there's a lot of different things to do in the world, and a lot of things that, a project might be initiated right by one person, but need 10 people to carry out doing different functions of that. So you can imagine that like a lot of times a group of generators might swarm around something and all sort of contribute in different ways, and work together and work on their individual strengths within that larger thing. So you really, as a generator, you can really trust what pulls you. And if you're any other type, you can know that like most people you're going to meet are this sort of thing where they're meant to respond. They're meant to kind of pivot towards what's calling them and be pulled into it, and have a naturally kind of open energy that is always drawing things in. And so if you're a generator type, you can really trust that like things are going to continually come towards you. It can be harder for some folks than others with different complexities of this, to trust that like, you can say no to things that aren't for you, but that is really the process for generator types. Manifesting generators are just a different version. So I mentioned that like our strategy is to respond. Like we're really meant to, as generator types, we're not starting things out of the blue. And even if we create something or start something, it's generally in response to something out in the world, which kind of makes sense, right? Because if we're always drawing things in, there's always going to be stuff to respond to. It just happens. Like with generators, it's happening all the time, all around you, every day. It might be tiny things that you just notice, or a conversation or something that makes you go, there's the thing there. You might respond with a strong no or a strong yes, right? That's just kind of naturally a thing that occurs. And that strategy in general is going to be to respond and to tune in. And I'm not going to go into the details of that in this video, but to tune into whether that's a yes or a no for you. Now with manifesting generators, you're still doing that and you're still responding. And it's very important to understand that you are a manifesting generator. So when I talk about manifestors in a second, that's not you. There are some similarities, and there is a combined strategy for y'all that combines the generator and the manifestor strategy. But your aura is still this open and enveloping. That's a big difference between manifestors and manifesting generators. So those two things, not the same. Manifesting generators, you still have this open aura. You're still pulling things in around you. You're still responding. However, the little caveat, the extra thing, the difference is that with a manifesting generator is that they're going to have a different kind of access, a more immediate kind of access might be one way to describe it, to being able to get things moving very quickly, to being able to connect. I respond and then like I express myself and the thing comes out in the world. A lot of times a manifesting generator's response is like they're already moving towards the thing. They tend to be quicker. They tend to be more sort of multitask oriented rather than focusing on one thing, although there is some nuance there, so take that with a grain of salt. often tend to naturally skip steps as part of their process, and kind of like wander around, but sometimes we'll find like a ridiculously efficient way to do things that nobody else had come up with. So that's just a quick little description of a manifesting generator. And then the add-on piece to your strategy is that you still respond, but because you have this kind of like quicker energy, this like very impactful kind of energy, you also need to add on one other element, which is it's to respond and inform. So what that means is you still start from responding. You're still going to respond to things in your environment. But once you have your yes, I'm moving towards it, there is this additional element of letting the people around you know what you're doing. That's what inform means in the human design context. So it's very neutral. It's not asking for permission. It's not demanding anything of anybody. It's not, there's nothing that like needs to happen other than that you're just giving some information. You're saying, I'm moving down my fast track. I got a yes. I'm responding. If it feels right for me, and I want you to know it's happening. Now, it can be hard because we're conditioned, I think, to ask for permission. We're not conditioned to really like be in our power and just say, I'm doing the thing. And it might feel like, can I trust this? Human design is all about self-trust, and it's all about sort of getting to the point where you trust your intuition. And I think you'll find as you practice with this, it can be scary for generator types, but I think you'll find, with any type really, you'll find over time that if you work with it, you're generally not going to be called toward, your intuition is not going to say, go rob a bank. I mean, I don't know, like eat the rich, whatever, I'm anti-capitalist, but generally like human design, I think, is cosmologically and philosophically, you do have to be willing to open yourself up to the possibility of self-trust, of believing that you're not inherently bad, you're not inherently wrong, that you do have an inner compass that can be trusted, and that there are ways to discern when things are, kind of like conditioning is coming in towards you, influence is coming in towards you that's not for you. You can learn how to, of course, take in information, learn how to acknowledge harm, how to talk about mistakes you made. I think human design can help with that too. So I want to be clear about that. But moving forward, like basically, yeah, the idea is that I think we can get really acculturated into the idea that it's always like about permission, and this inform thing is not about asking, it's just about letting people know so that you're not running into them as you're doing your really fast process. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that strategy as well, because it's also the strategy for manifestors is to inform, period. That's their strategy. So we'll get to that. Let's actually go ahead and do that. Let's talk about manifestors. So about 70% of these two types, generator, manifesting generator, these are the folks who are kind of doing the work, carrying out the work large, right? That relationships are work, play, right? Anything, right? Energetic output, not work in the sense of making money. So the manifestors, y'all are a pretty interesting, unique type in a certain way, because I've seen different estimates. I'm not sure where we're at now, but it's somewhere around 10% of the population, maybe a little less than 10%. The idea with the manifestors is that you have this unique ability to actually initiate energy, to spark the energy in the world. So, I mean, it could have started with you. Maybe I should have started with you, because you are the sort of spark. You are the only type that is like bringing in something completely new energetically, putting it down on the table, and you're saying, hey, never seen this before, here it is. And then all us generators swarm around and go, what can I do with that? What can I do with that, right? So you're starting to kind of build a picture of the collective, right? You've got about 10%, so a smallish number of people who are like putting something out in the world that all these other people are going to be messing with. A manifestor, you do have this unique thing that a lot of other people are going to be envious of. A lot of other people are going to wish that we could like just out of the blue be like, yeah, I have an idea and here it is and it's successful. Like if I try to do that, it does not go well. I have to respond to things. The challenge with a manifestor is that because everyone else, like except for other manifestors, can't do what you can do, it does mean that it's really easy to get influenced, conditioned into doing things a different way, to be told that like it's impolite the way you are, that it's rude, that you need to always be asking for permission, that you need to always be responding to things like a generator, and you're not a generator. I don't have time to go into this a whole lot, but like that's the sort of starting point for that. And so if your whole thing is to drop things and be like, here it is, create things that are unique, you have a very different energy to that of a generator. So I mentioned the generator is kind of just like going, like the Energizer Bunny. As long as we're like going in a good direction for us, we can kind of sustain that energy. Manifestor is very different. It's much more of a burst, an on and off switch. Sometimes you'll see the term like a manifestor urge, manifestor spark. Basically, the idea is you can just be kind of going about your day, and then suddenly you're like, oh, I need to create something, or I need to ask this person out, or I need to go to this location, or whatever it is, right? You can just be like this urge that I have to do it. Your energetic aura is described as closed and repelling. So it's actually pushing people away, which may seem strange. Like, oh no, I don't know, like, do I want closed and repelling? The idea is that because you have this very unique process that is very self-initiated, your energy is helping you with that by getting people who are going to try to interfere with that out of the way. It's saying, I got a thing to do. It's also, part of it is that you have a lot of impact. And so that impact can be like literally dropping a rock, right? It's gonna create, like if you drop a rock in a puddle, right, it's gonna create like a wave outward. If you do it on the ground, it's gonna make dust go, right? So it's almost like that, where you're designed for impact. That can be challenging because sometimes people are not gonna like the impact. Some people are gonna like the impact. Most of the people who are impacted, you will never know. You usually impact like 3 times as many people. I've heard 3 to 4 times as many people as you think you're impacting as a manifestor. And so that's something that's hard to trust, but it's good to like kind of build trust in, is to know that you are having impact no matter what you do, which is why it's a good idea to practice your strategy, which again is to inform, because you don't have a choice about impact. You're always going to have impact. You just do. And unfortunately, if you're like kind of not in alignment or don't really know what's going on, or you know, there's a few different ways that can play out. Sometimes folks can get really shy and really like and really internal and kind of like not want to engage with the world and not want to have impact and be like, oh, like there could be a lot of rejection. Sensitivity might be a challenge. Others can really just feel like they're the person that pisses everybody off, and like everyone's always angry around them and they're angry too, and it's like, why can't people just and so what human design is trying to do for manifestors is it's giving you this strategy of informing. It's kind of weird because everyone else's strategy is about how they make decisions, how we decide what's energetically right for us. Manifestors is more like you just know. Manifestors is like, I have an urge to do it. And some of that is like, there's definitely trust built in, and you still have an authority. We're not talking about authority in these videos. Like, you're still going to have a particular way that you can tell if something is right for you, but the thing that sparks that, the thing that, you know, that you have to decide whether to do is internal. It just comes from you. It just comes out of whatever. And so most people's strategy is something like respond. Yours is inform, and the point of informing has nothing to do with like your actual creative process. It's about clearing that space. It's about making it so that the impact you naturally have, that aura that like literally pushes at people, that you know, kind of like, like I feel poked, right? If that's just happening subconsciously, you're just poking and people are just like annoyed, it's very different from if you inform people and say, hey, just so you know, this is happening. So your strategy is like informing the people that you know are going to be impacted by the thing. That's pretty obvious that if you think of somebody and go, like this might affect them, just let them know what you're doing. Again, it's not a permission thing. You really don't want to ask for permission as a manifestor. That'll really piss you off and piss everybody else off. And that's like, you know, it's a hard thing to work through, and it's a hard thing to decondition from. But the more and more you can find space to just neutrally inform. It also doesn't have to be like, I'm doing this or else, right? That might feel kind of nice sometimes, but you know, it's really just saying like, let's say you and I, manifestor, had a dinner plan and you're like, I have an urge to create tonight and I'm not doing the dinner plan. You just text me and say, hey, I just want to let you know that my plans have changed. I need to do something else. I'm not going to make it to dinner. And so it's that challenge of it not being like, is it okay? Because then I'm going to say, I don't know if it's okay. And it's also not like, I don't know, You don't have to like tell a whole story or anything. It can just be like, here's what's happening. And if people react badly, it's kind of on them. You can kind of train people in your life and help them to know that this is something you're going to be experimenting with, trying out. When I work with manifestors, I encourage them to kind of talk, especially to their close people, and be like, hey, I'm going to try this, but I want you to know that if I give you this neutral information, you know, you might, like, that might feel weird if that's not normally how I communicate. And so I want you to know that I'm not trying to be passive aggressive. I'm not trying to be weird. I'm not anything. I'm practicing for myself, not asking for permission, just giving you information. And the other person can also give you information, right? The other person can say, okay, well, like, I kind of was looking forward to the thing. I'm just going to tell you that, like, right? And see see what happens. It's also important the manifestors know there is kind of an exception around like just kind of letting it happen and be like, sorry, get out of my way. Because a lot of the times the manifestors almost like, it's like honking your horn and going fast on the highway and saying, I'm coming. And like your job is not to get out of the way. Your job is to keep moving and for other people to get out of your way. And I have manifestors I'm close to. And this sounds really like disruptive, like theoretically, but in reality, it actually does work. And I appreciate it. Like I appreciate people telling me as a generator, by the way, plans have changed. Great. That means I can reschedule around you. What I don't like, and what most people don't like with manifestors, when they don't inform, and then it's like you show up at the restaurant and they're not there, and you're like, what the hell's happening? Or they're pissed off and they're annoyed because they can't do their thing, right? That's not fun either. I don't want you to be there. If you really want to be creating something, I'd rather you be like, create your thing and we'll have dinner later. So I think that's like remembering that it might feel like you're getting in people's way or you're hurting people but it's like giving them the information that's honest allows everyone else to kind of move around you. The one exception though is if somebody is to like, this does not apply, and it's human design is specific about this. The time where this doesn't apply is like if there's a violation, if it's a situation of like someone needs to state a boundary, that's different. So, you know, if you inform someone and they say like I have a bound, and there's some discernment here of what that actually means and what the line is, but you know, this is about consent. This is about, you know, safety. With manifestor kids, there's a lot of this where it's like, sometimes the parent has to say, I'm sorry, like, no, you cannot put your finger in the light socket. You know, if it's a safety thing, if it's a harm thing, if it's a boundary thing, that's a little bit different. But when it's just something like, oh, I don't want to go to dinner, right? That's not one of those situations. So that's manifestor. And for the rest of us, we can kind of know that manifestors, they might poke us. They might tend to make us feel like a lot of ways. Maybe the stuff they're doing has an impact and we're just like, Arr! But we have to check in with our own self and be like, am I called to respond to this? If we're a generator, for example, like sometimes yes. And sometimes it's just like, they're just doing their thing. It has nothing to do with me. In fact, a lot of times manifestor stuff pushes me away and I go, oh great, that's information that I'm not really meant to work with that person. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with not being meant to work with them. Sometimes a manifestor does something, I'm like, oh my God, I'm responding to it, right? So a lot of times generators and manifestors, like we will kind of butt heads, but we also are kind of meant to work together. It's just that we usually aren't working directly together. It's usually more that the generator is working with the energy the manifestor dropped in the world. So that's the other thing, is that a manifestor, if you put something out there, it will have an impact. And like, you don't have to necessarily be, I don't want to say you don't have to be accountable for it, because that sounds kind of weird, but like, if you put a project out and you're like, I feel done. I feel like I've done the thing I meant to do. And then it might be a startup, for example. Or, yeah, let's say it's a startup. You're not necessarily the one who's meant to steward that organization through the next 10 years. You drop the startup, and when you feel energetically done with it, it's like, great, I'm passing it on. Does anybody want this startup? Anybody want to do something with it? Here it is. So often the manifestor is the one who initiates, and then the generators kind of come in, and we're not working directly together, but I might be working with the thing you put out in the world. Or a manifestor might say something on social media that inspires me to be like, oh my God, I'm going to do a whole class around this. You don't want to do the class. You don't even know why you were supposed to say it. You just felt you were supposed to say it, right? So that's kind of that energetic there. So we've gotten through 3. There's 2 more types. We have our projectors. So projectors are about 20%-ish of the population, and they're really here to guide energy. Projectors, sometimes described as the sleepy ones. I mean, that's not true of all types, and they're kind of subtypes of each of these. We're not going into too much nuance here, but the projectors are like manifestors. They don't have that continuous, all the rest that we're talking about do not have this continuous generator energy thing. So with a manifestor, it's kind of an on-off switch, almost like a flip. Manifestors can feel kind of moody. I mean that as a neutral term, not a judgment. Just like it can feel like, oh, I'm on fire, and then now I'm just kind of like, bleh. And you kind of have to have space and time for your creative process. Again, that's why your energy is pushing others away. Projectors, similarly, you will sometimes be called into something, and the rest of the time, you're not. You're like sitting here and waiting, like, when is it my turn? When is it time to do something? And, a world of 9-to-5 jobs doesn't work great for projectors, manifestors, or reflectors. So all of these types are probably going to struggle if unfortunately sometimes you're going to have to, but if you have to have a 9-to-5, it doesn't always work the best. I think it's good if you do have to have a 9-to-5 to look for ones that have more flexibility, maybe some off time built into the work, finding something that feels right, or having a different structure. So with a projector, a lot of you do need extra rest. Like you just need downtime. You need rest. You need sleep. Literally, it's okay. Like part of your training is like, you're not a generator. You're not meant to work as hard. That's okay. That's allowed. We need you. Hi, I'm a generator. I'm telling you, we need you. I don't need you to work as hard as I do. I'm not asking you to. I think this is, this is one of the energetics too, is like when you live in a house with somebody or you're around somebody a lot, sometimes we can have like guilt and shame around how much we're working, what we're doing, how we're contributing. I might feel guilt and shame that I'm not like coming up with tons of ideas. A projector might feel guilt and shame because you feel like I should be working more. Human design is about letting some of that go, whatever isn't ours, and taking on what is ours. And so like what we need you for, projectors, is to be that like energetic guide. Your energetic aura is much more focused. It's like a laser beam. It's like what's the Jedi? Like a lightsaber, where you really focus on one person at a time. So if generators are doing this, drawing everything in, open and enveloping, manifestors pushing out, making space to do their own thing, projectors are like little beams. They go bloop, 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 right, one person at a time. So you're going to tend to have kind of like really narrow focus, and it's almost like your energy is like hooked into their energy, and so you can kind of like, there can be some absorption going on there. The reason for that is that as somebody who's meant to guide others, you need to be able to like hook into their energy. You need to be able to be like, okay, let me feel this moving through my design. So a lot of what you're doing and what can be hard with the projector is that you're going to have a lot of energy flowing through you that isn't yours. You're going to have a lot of, like, you might have emotions, experiences, thoughts, feelings. I said feelings already. Emotions, feelings, thoughts, feeling of like, I should do this, right? Like a possible action flowing through you that aren't for you. It's just that as you hook into people, their stuff flows through you. And as you can learn to like recognize that and know what's yours and know what isn't yours, you can then really like guide and advise us on things we don't see. Like my energy moves through you, and something I didn't even notice in myself, you're like, oh, here's what's happening. So that's a really cool gift. That's a really cool talent. Projectors tend to, part of like why you need extra kind of free time, like one is that you need rest to clear your aura. You need time alone, or time in nature is great for you. Time in nature is great for everyone for different reasons, but like, you need some sort of clearing of all this energetic aura, because you do take it in, you absorb it, you kind of work with it. You need to be able to then flush it out at the end of the day or after a call or whatever it is. You need to make space. So if you're around a projector, know that they don't hate you. They just need some space to like clear out. It's an energetic thing. It's not a like, I need time away from you because I don't like you. It's just like a mechanics. Because they need to come back to themselves. And a projector, you need to come back to, get wise to what is yours. It requires having time separate from others' energies to say, okay, this is me. Okay, this is you plus me. That means me, you plus me minus me equals you. Like that's how you figure out and discern what someone else is. You spend a lot of your time as well as projectors typically studying and doing what you love. So whatever is calling you, similar to a generator, whatever is like calling you in, study is pretty common for projectors. A lot of times you'll be interested in like a niche subject, a special interest, something's really like, man, I really want to learn everything about this. That's great. Follow that, because having that base of expertise is what helps you to guide and advise people. So a lot of times a projector might end up being a specialist who can guide a bunch of people working in a specific field, or you could be more broad-based, but you could have like a lot of knowledge, let's say like a counselor who learns a lot about humans and how they interact and is able to guide people. Because you don't have as much sort of like energetic resources as others and as much to give to work, your strategy is really there to support that. So for you, your strategy is going to be waiting to be both recognized and invited. So it's a two-parter for you. You need to be recognized. That basically is like being seen as yourself. You need to be, you're always getting like invitations, that's to be invited. And those invitations need to come from a place of actually asking you. So explicit invitation, especially for the big things in life. Obviously, you're not going to not do anything unless you're invited. And like I said, do what you love. So like you don't need any permission, you don't need any invitation to do what you love. But if there's something like a new job, a place you're considering moving to, a relationship, typically you do best with those big things when somebody is like explicitly saying, hey, I have a thing for you. I have an opportunity. It might not seem super formal. It might just be like, hey, I saw this job and thought of you or something. Although a lot of times it isn't just like, I saw the job and thought of you. It's more like I have the job and I thought of you. Because since you do have this really valuable thing to give, but you don't have a ton of time, like you can't literally be working all day, it means that you need to be adequately compensated for that energetic investment. Compensated could mean money, but it could also mean things like a space to do the thing. It could mean energetic resources. There's this piggybacking effect where if I invite you as a generator and I say, oh my God, I'd love to work with you. Would you be interested in doing this thing? And you feel like I am asking you, not generic you, but like you, because I know something about you and I'm telling you like, oh my God, I've seen how talented you are at advising people in this area. I could really use somebody to do this work with me. Like I really need somebody with that skill set. I'm talking specifically to you. You feel seen. I invite you explicitly, and then again, we're not talking about authority in this video, but your authority says a yes. It's like you can take my generator energy and use it for a little while, for however long the thing is meant to last. So you can have more energy to work towards things where you are like invited in and you are sort of specifically. But that piece of recognition is really important, and I think a lot of times projectors will miss that and just be like, oh, somebody invited me. But if it's just sort of like, hey, you, I've never met you before, but like you want to do this thing, like that's not honoring what you have to give, and that person's probably not going to be investing something to bring you in. Another area, like this is true for big decisions, another area where it's good to have some degree of like invitation and recognition is guidance itself, because projectors always have advice. You have great advice, and a lot of times I talk to projectors who feel kind of like I have such great advice, I don't know why people won't listen to me. Or like, I don't get it. And the reason is because your aura is so like laser focused that, similar to a manifestor's, it's pretty intense for the rest of us. Like, we're not used to being seen that well. I mean, that's a beautiful thing you can do, but if we're not ready for it, then it's like, oh shit, I'm really being seen. You're literally absorbing my energy into you. That's like real intense. So that strategy of invitation and being recognized helps you to basically be turning towards the people who are ready and looking for what you have specifically to offer. It means that you're not going to be wasting your energy on folks who aren't ready or aren't going to hear, aren't going to listen, aren't going to take your advice, don't care. But you're really able to have the experience of having that advice listened to, of having it valued. And if you've had a lot of experiences where people are really not doing that for you, projectors, just know that that is not that doesn't mean your advice isn't worthy or isn't meaningful or isn't useful. It's just probably that it's going towards people who aren't quite right for it. And so you want to be looking for, if it's like a small piece of advice, it might not be like a formal invitation, but it could be something as simple as in a meeting, like not speaking up until somebody says, hey, I'd love to hear your opinion. Or if somebody makes eye contact with you, sometimes that can feel like an invitation if it's something smaller. So you can be kind of flexible about what that feels like to you, like that recognition and invitation. But what you don't want to do is give a lot of unsolicited advice and just kind of like, I want everyone to know this is what they should be doing, because that's just going to kind of annoy people if they're not ready for it, and it's going to make you feel rejected and maybe even doubt your own talents and skills. So that's the projectors. They're kind of guiding the energy, especially when you have a lot of generators around. Projectors are often working with generators. You can kind of see why, because a manifestor does not really want advice, does not need advice, does not want advice. Manifestor does their own thing. Generators moving around in little swarms of bees. Projectors might be the project managers, might be the ones that help us to see things we didn't see, the coaches, the counselors, etc. Not that any one job goes with any one type, but those are the kinds of things projectors can be really good at. Finally, I know I said this would be a short video. I'm incapable of making short videos. If you're familiar with this channel, you know that. But sorry. Maybe I'll try to do a 10-minute version of this. But for the reflectors, if you're watching this, comment and say hello, because I only know one reflector. Reflectors are about 1% of the population. Not common at all. So your way of doing things is just people aren't used to it. It's okay. That's what you're supposed to be. Reflector is like a canary in a coal mine, because you have this very open design. I mentioned this dynamic of energy moving through the projector. Same thing happens for you. Other people's energy is moving towards you, moving through you. You don't absorb it in the same way, though, which is helpful. It means you don't have that same kind of like, oh my God, I'm bogged down with energy. You're more, you're sampling. Your energy is described as, I want to say reflective and sampling. Is that the wrong word? Well, it's definitely sampling. I think it's reflective and I feel like there's some other, I have the wrong word in my head right now, but it's definitely sampling. So the idea is like you're moving through an environment and you're going do, 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 and you're sampling from the buffet. You're contacting people's energy. It's moving through you and then it goes on its way. It's just constantly moving through you. You're just experiencing, you're observing, you're moving around. Reflectors tend to like to be in the center of the room, but not necessarily because it's about you, but more because it's like you want to have a conversation with everybody. You want to engage, you want to see who's for you and who's not. You need to have that flexibility. You need to be able to move around and quickly be like, I'm done with this conversation, moving to the next one. Keep going, keep circulating, right? Keep sampling energy. You also do this through time. So with a reflector, your strategy is wait a lunar cycle. When you have, this is for big decisions mostly, right? Especially because obviously you're not going to wait a lunar cycle before you decide what to eat for lunch. But for big things, you do want to wait like that full 28-day cycle, and sometimes more than one. Because what happens with a reflector is energy passes through you from people around you, but also from the transits, from the planets moving in the sky. And because of the moon, the speed of the moon kind of reflects energy down onto the earth through its cycle. And so you want to get from like one new moon to the next new moon, because it's basically what is happening there is that you're having an experience to get to feel all the types, all the ways people could feel basically throughout the month. And so you start out with something, it's hard for you to make big decisions in the moment because you need to actually feel all the angles of it. Imagine walking very slowly around something really large, right? And you need to see the whole thing before you can say yes or no. So you need people in your life who are patient, who will let you have that process for big decisions. You need to be able to move around a lot, to be in different environments, to trust yourself and feel out if a place feels right, if a person feels right. and you're just doing a lot of this movement. And you're a canary in a coal mine because you're able to experience all of our energy. And you're really, like, it's sort of like a projector, but it's this other level of it where instead of like directly advising sort of groups of people or single people one at a time, a reflector is like, here's what's going on in the environment. So you often can let us know about things that are happening energetically, about things that are happening, you know, trends that are happening, like experiences that we're having as a collective. Maybe, you know, you might do this, whether it's as a writer or like maybe you have a podcast or whatever it is you do as a reflector. Maybe you just chat with a lot of people in your life, but you're able to say like, something is like, and so it's like, or like a little test strip where it's like, whoops, something's unhealthy. And like, you can let other people know that. It's a powerful and important thing. And again, it's only 1%. So like, we don't have that many people who are doing that, but because they can do it for the whole, everything in their environment, we don't need as many people who are doing that. Again, if you're a reflector, let me know. Yeah, so that was a longer than intended look at strategies and energy types, but I hope it was nonetheless helpful to think about sort of like what the balance are of these types. You can kind of imagine how people are circling around each other. So as a final recap, you know, you've got your manifestors who are doing their own thing. They're generating energy in the world. They're kind of, I shouldn't say generating, they're initiating energy in the world. They're kind of naturally pushing people away so that they can have their own process, their own space, but they're impacting everyone around them. You have the generators who are moving around and we're responding to things. We're pulling things in. It might be something a manifestor just initiated. It might be energy another generator is already working with. Whatever it is, we're bouncing around and we're pulling things in and we're really responding to what we love. You have the projectors who are making sure they have plenty of space for themselves, for rest, for study, for what they love, so that they can be an awesome guide to help guide all this energy that's moving around in different pieces by tuning in to each person one at a time and really having that focused, absorbing, energetic aura where they can experience and help us to understand our aura a little better and how our energies work together. And then finally, you have our reflectors who are occasionally you're going to see circling around, being that canary in a coal mine and really reflecting the nature of the collective of everything, of, you know, spiritual, philosophical, environmental, whatever you want to call it, these big truths and trends and change in the world. So that's a little bit of a review of all the roles that we have in our collective in human design terms. If you found this interesting, if you're still here, leave a comment and say you got to the end of the video. I bet it's nobody, but if it is, hi! Here I am at the end of the video. And if you find this stuff interesting, I have a newsletter. I'd love for you to sign up below. You can find out everything that I'm doing. Talking about here and on my blog about human design, about tarot astrology, neurodivergence, all these different interrelated topics. And this topic of like how different designs interrelate with each other is something that I'm really passionate about and intend to be doing more work on in the near future. And so I would love if that's something that you would like to know more about, if you check it out. You can get the free resource to learn a little more about your specific type, and I'll see you in the next video.